simply because of the profits that are carried with it.
And what's at stake here is billions of dollars. These documents released in court here today reveal that in just one case in California, the leaders of the Medellin cartel complained they'd lost $400 million because there was so much cash to handle that the $400 million rotted and disintegrated in a wet basement in Los Angeles before the cartel could sneak the cash out of the country. Brian Ross, NBC News, Atlanta.
Inside Colombia, meanwhile, the tension rose today and officials braced for possible reprisals. After all, the drug cartels have threatened that for every suspect extradited, they will kill 10 Colombian judges and 5 Americans. NBC's Noah Nelson is in Bogota.
Additional troops and police today patrol the streets of Bogota. With the extradition of Eduardo Martinez to the U.S., many Colombians fear further reprisals from the drug cartel bosses.
The situation's getting worse. I'm scared to walk the streets. There could be a bomb anywhere.
We run the risk that any of these cars contain explosives. We live in constant fear.
The threat of violence has forced some Americans to leave the country. This American businessman, who does not want his identity revealed, says many Americans here have adopted a low profile.
We're avoiding restaurants, things of that sort at this point, keeping our exposure just as to a minimal.
The atmosphere of siege has affected the country's process of electing a new president. The only place most candidates can be seen publicly is on billboards. One presidential candidate who may have nothing to fear is Alberto Santafimio. He is among 11 public figures whose U.S. tourist visas have been revoked because of suspected association with drug bosses. Meanwhile, Colombia's President Virgilio Barco has issued an order giving the military the right to assume control over cities to restore order. 3 towns are now under military rule. Juan Gomez, the mayor of Medellin, has said he would refuse to step aside. The Colombian government is now running TV ads offering a $250,000 reward for information leading to the capture of 2 leading cartel bosses. In the war on drugs, the Colombian government has not asked the people to fight the drug bosses with guns, but with the strength of their will. Noah Nelson, NBC News, Bogota.
The U.S. Senate today decided that it could forego some of its privileges to help in the war against drugs. It voted 83-8 to give up free mass mailings from Senate offices. That should save $45 million, which senators want to be used to help addicted pregnant women, mothers, and infants.
Crosswords and croissants mean Sunday breakfast at our house, complemented by the rich, fresh flavor of Sunsweet pitted prunes. Sunsweet, an 8-letter word that means delicious. Only one prune tastes Sunsweet.
The finer things in life. Happily, some are affordable, like Grey Poupon Dijon mustard. Grey Poupon is so fine, it's even made with white wine. Its original French Dijon recipe adds distinctive flavor to beef, pork, and poultry, salad dressing and sauces, and of course, sandwiches. So enjoy one of life's finer pleasures.
Pardon me, would you have any Grey Poupon?
But of course. Grey Poupon, one of life's finer pleasures.
What's this? Okay. Who said it? We heard. Oh, Mark. Guys, he's really not worth it. Men are only good for one thing. And how important is parallel parking anyway?
Shoebox greetings. If you go for thoughts like these, you gotta go to Hallmark.
What's with you? My boyfriend dumped me.
We're here to gently remind you that you can depend on your mom.
Phillips Milk of Magnesia, the laxative for dependable overnight relief that contains no harsh irritants.
So it's gentle.
Nobody treats you better than Phillips Milk of Magnesia.
Mom knows best. Leave it to Mom.
Continuing turmoil in South Africa, a day after the white minority held on to power in segregated elections in that country, the government is now saying that reports of death tolls ranging from 20 to 60 on Election Day are exaggerated, that only 13 people in townships were killed. However, activists blame the killings on police who used shotguns, tear gas, and whips on protesters. Today, still more conflict. NBC's Robin Lloyd in South Africa.
A day of celebrations for opposition white parties. Both the far right and the liberals scored big gains, handing the ruling National Party its biggest setback in 41 years. But with a majority in Parliament, acting President F.W. de Klerk could still claim victory.
We are quite satisfied. We interpret the result as a clear mandate.
But after yesterday's fierce battles in the townships, that mandate is now seen by many blacks as a mandate for increased repression. All day yesterday, police were on the rampage. Nearly 100 people were injured, in addition to the still unknown number of dead. Anti-apartheid activists are blaming de Klerk for one of the bloodiest days in political unrest here.
People who begin their new term of office with a massacre of 23 people have no right to be in government.
Throughout the campaign, de Klerk tried to portray himself as a reformer, promising to give blacks more political rights within 5 years.
White domination, in as much as it exists, must come to an end.
But de Klerk has sent conflicting signals. Listen to his criticism of equal voting rights for blacks.
If you think that only a one-man, one-vote system on common voters' rolls can result in democracy, it can result in the end of democracy.
But even if de Klerk is sincere about reform, it may be too little, too late for most blacks who are growing increasingly impatient with white rule.
Police ferocity in the townships is also sending a signal of hardening attitudes, a move away from compromise. Today there was more tear gassing, even as one family buried a victim of the recent confrontations with police. One lieutenant described white police officers as out of control.
They were so wild, like wild dogs. They went on just beating the kids.
This latest use of police force is likely to further undermine a weakened government already under fire from its own white constituency. Robin Lloyd, NBC News, Johannesburg.
The civil war in Ethiopia has been raging for 28 years now. Finally, today, peace talks in an unlikely place arranged by an unlikely mediator. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter got delegations from the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean People's Liberation Front together in Atlanta at the Carter Center on the campus of Emory University. The warring parties arrived today in separate buses. Mr. Carter arranged the meeting during a trip to Ethiopia earlier this year.
If they could see you now, they'd see you're having fun. Taking in the sights and playing in the sun. They won't believe that you are such a good sport. Buying all those gifts in a tropical port. All I can say is, wow, I'm having such a ball. What a friendship, holy cow. They'd never believe it if your friends could see you now.
Take a 3, 4, 7-day cruise on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
240.
211.
You? 175.
Whoa! A few years ago, hardly anyone knew their cholesterol level.
215.
But now people are finding out.
182.
Many have started eating a low-fat, low-cholesterol diet, including foods like Kellogg's Common Sense Oat Bran, with more oat bran than any leading ready-to-eat cereal.
219. I gotta start living right.
Kellogg's Common Sense Oat Bran. To more and more people, it's the oat bran that makes sense.
Now Red Lobster tempts you like never before with king crab legs, sweet snow crab, luscious Dungeness. It's our Crab Lovers Festival, starting at an incredible $6.95. Give in to temptation. 8 great crab and seafood platters you'll love, starting at just $6.95. The Crab Lovers Festival, now at Red Lobster. And kids get shrimp, a complete meal, just $1.95.
The evaluation committee is in your office.
This is my husband, Paul. He's under a lot of pressure. But now he's taking charge of his health, eating right by cutting down on cholesterol and saturated fat. That's why I cook with Puritan, with no cholesterol and proven 94% saturated fat-free. Better than any other kind of oil.
Your wife calls sneakers before dinner?
Hey, Mr. Principal, carry your books?
Anytime.
Paul's feeling great, and I am too.
Puritan. Make it his oil for life.
American drug enforcement officials confirmed today that Colombia's crackdown has almost doubled the wholesale price in this country of a kilo of cocaine. That's 2.2 pounds. But, they say, the price of crack cocaine on the street has not yet gone up. On tonight's Drug Watch, our series of special reports this week, Breaking the Habit, the scientific search for something to help addicts break free of their need for cocaine. NBC Science correspondent Robert Bazell has more.
In Detroit, Susan Barbier was sentenced to life imprisonment last week for setting up her 13-year-old daughter to be raped by this man. Miss Barbier said she did it to get money to pay for crack cocaine. On the streets of New York City, dealers openly sell crack to customers who wait in line. Such scenes clearly show that law enforcement and treatment are doing little to slow the crack epidemic. Officials increasingly are hoping that medical research will offer some help.
If we can develop a pharmacologic approach to help us in our treatment efforts, it probably is the most important thing at this point that we could do.
So far, the search for a drug that would dampen an addict's craving is going slowly. At the National Institute on Drug Abuse in Baltimore, scientists are studying cocaine's effects on the brain using addicts hooked up to a multi-million-dollar machine called a PET scan. The researchers have found that cocaine affects the outer cortex of the brain. Here, the red areas show normal brain activity. When a person is taking cocaine, there is less red, less activity in the cortex. The scientists are looking for the specific parts of the brain called receptors where the cocaine goes.
The possibility, and again, it's just a possibility, of developing a blocker for cocaine could be realized by somehow designing a drug that would prevent cocaine from binding to its receptor site.
These rats are pressing a bar to obtain cocaine, and they will continue taking cocaine, ignoring food until they die of starvation. Studies have found a drug that can stop this behavior in animals, but no one knows whether it will work in people. The scientists hope that eventually they will find a drug for cocaine that is similar to methadone, which cuts down the craving for heroin. But methadone has been no panacea. Many addicts use cocaine while they are on methadone, and most return to heroin use. Also, many people who treat cocaine addicts in group sessions such as this one doubt there will be a methadone-type substitute for cocaine, because they say the craving for cocaine is mostly psychological.
It really reeks of ridiculousness to imagine that you can find something physical to solve a psychological problem. That's not even possible.
One approach that is showing some promise is to relieve the depression that cocaine users often feel when they stop taking the drug. Tests have shown that an antidepressant called dazipramine can be useful.
In the one study that's finished, dazipramine produced initial abstinence, started to get people off of cocaine at the rate of 60%.
But initial abstinence, getting people to stop using the drug for a few days, is not a cure for addiction. Most researchers believe there will be no medical cure for cocaine addiction for a long time. Robert Bazell, NBC News, New York.
Democratic Congressman Barney Frank today confirmed a Washington Times report that he used his congressional immunity to quash parking tickets that were incurred by a personal aide who was also a male prostitute. However, the Massachusetts congressman said he did it only for those tickets written when that aide was using Frank's car for official business.